Harley-Davidson is a brand that you'd usually associate with big burly cruisers and high-end touring motorcycles. But you know what? They also happen to make some sporty motorcycles. In fact, they have a whole Sportster range dedicated to this segment. And it's not that they're new to it. In fact, the history of the Sportster range goes all the way back to 1957. It has evolved into various new models. Now, this also means that the Sportster range is quite popular around the world. In fact, it's seen as the beginner's Harley. Now, coming back to the present, what we have here today is the latest Sportster bike from Harley-Davidson. It's called the 48 Special. It's just been launched in India. And so, as you can make out, today we are going to ride it and we'll tell you whether it's as sporty as its maker claims it to be. Now, Harley-Davidson says that it's an all-new motorcycle, but again, there's a bit of a catch in there because this is not an all-new bike. Basically, it's based on the 48 and that model was launched in 2010. It gets the same 1200cc V-twin engine. The suspension is also the same, the brakes are also the same, and in fact, more or less everything is unchanged. But the main functional change being this handlebar. Now, it's a tall boy design, as Harley likes to call it, and it's been raised by around 7.25 inches. So that means it gets relaxed cruiser sort of a look, but overall, again, it's a Sportster, so that means it's a sporty bike, but with a cruiser stance, and it's not as aggressive as the 48, the standard model. Apart from that, yeah, of course, the tank is the same. It's the same peanut tank as Harley likes to call it, and it's quite tiny. It's only 7.9 liters. And the engine, like I said, it's the same V-twin unit, but now you get these chrome casings. So again, there's a lot of chrome, but overall, technically the bike is unchanged from the 48. In terms of features and equipment, the 48 Special doesn't get anything special actually. It has the same analog dial, and there's a small LCD display which shows you the engine RPM, the trip meters, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, there are no electronic aids. That means you don't get any traction control or any riding modes. As for the brakes, it has a single disc with twin pistons, and ABS is standard. Like I said, the 48 Special isn't an all-new motorcycle, but it does stand out because of its unique design and paint job. The tall by handlebar and upright riding position also makes it more practical and comfortable to ride, and this means that the Special can be taken on long rides as well. That said, with its tiny fuel tank, you get a range of only around 100 kilometers, meaning on a long journey you'll have to stop a lot to refuel. The engine is a classic V-twin and it springs to life with the signature thump. It develops 97 Nm of torque, and all of that flows in at 4,250 RPM. It's a slow revving engine though, and after 3000 RPM it transfers quite a lot of vibrations to the rider through the handlebar and foot pegs. That said, you don't really have to rev it that hard, as there's a lot of torque low down in the rev range, and as a result it never feels gutless. In fact, the acceleration is quite brisk, especially when you consider that this motorcycle weighs 252 kilograms. The gearbox is a 5-speed unit, but it's not the sleekest transmission around. Gear shifts are crude and clunky, and the cable operated clutch is quite hard to operate. If you find yourself stuck in traffic, this can get a bit tiring. Plus, the heat from the air-cooled engine can really get unbearable if you're stuck in a jam. However, while all of this isn't really enjoyable, the same factors also make it feel very mechanical and old school to ride, and some of the riders may actually like that. In terms of handling, the 48 Special is actually a pretty interesting motorcycle to ride around in town. The suspension is set up on the firmer side, and as a result it feels quite stable and sure-footed around corners. It's not an outright corner carver for sure, but it definitely has a sporty and playful side. The cornering clearance, however, is limited, and you end up grinding the foot pegs quite easily when leaned over. Now, because of its sporty underpinnings, the ride is quite firm, and on uneven roads, the impact from the bump is transferred directly to your spine. Overall though, I have to say that it's a very sporty and quite nice to ride. So now that we have ridden the motorcycle, it's time to get down to the facts. Let's start with the pricing first. It's been launched at Rs 10.98 lakh, and that's before options. So that means it's quite expensive. I mean, you don't get a lot of bike in return, considering that there are no fancy equipments, there are no modern gadgets, and in fact, it doesn't even have any rider rates, it just gets ABS. So is it worth the money? Well, I'd say if you compare it with other rivals, other motorcycles in the range, so there are motorcycles that offer more features and they're more sporty in terms of handling, in terms of engine performance. But the 48 Special, for me, it has that old school charm. It's back to basic sort of riding. So in case you're looking for a motorcycle, so you want something like that from a motorcycle, then this is a pretty good choice. I mean, it's not heavy, it's not cumbersome to ride, you can ride it daily. Again, you have to have that sort of mindset. If you're looking for a crude motorcycle that has that old school charm, the 48 Special really makes sense.